The big story, and it seems with divisions in the Labour Party over the treatment of Diane Abbott, the Tories are indulging in their own mini civil war. With figures in the popular Conservatives movement, including Annunziata Rees-Mogg, issuing a plan for policies that they want included in Rishi Sunak's election manifesto. They include leaving the European Convention on Human Rights in order to unlock the Rwanda plan, reform the Bank of England, abolish the Office for Budget Responsibility, scrap net zero, and reduce corporate tax rates, income tax, stamp duty, and remove inheritance tax altogether. So will Rishi Sunak go for any of these options, and could they save the Conservatives with just 5 weeks to go? Or is this Tories fighting like rats in a sack to inevitable defeat? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome former Conservative Government Minister Edwina Currie and one of my pundits tonight, the director of the popular Conservative movement, Mark Littlewood. Mark, I'll come to you in a moment, but Edwina Currie, would this shift to the right help Rishi Sunak?
Well, I wonder where Annunziata Rees-Mogg, goodness, but what a moniker. I wonder where she's been recently, and particularly during the shortest serving prime ministership of Liz Truss, because a lot of that stuff was exactly what Liz Truss was saying, cut taxes, go for growth, all that kind of thing. The trouble is that people like that also want to increase spending on all sorts of other things, and the money would have to come from borrowing. The reaction of the international markets, of course, is to shove up interest rates. Everybody right now is paying higher mortgages than they would have done if Liz Truss hadn't opened her mouth in exactly the same way and said all that stuff a couple of years ago. And Rishi Sunak's job would have been an awful lot easier. You know, one of the things the Tories have been known for in the past is good economic management, not for making kind of teenage debating points, knowing perfectly well that you're never going to be in a position where you're going to have to do it. Oh, and by the way, can I say hello to Mark? I remember being in Bosnia with him back in the days when he was very much involved with the European movement and with, wasn't it the Liberal Democrats, or have I forgotten that wrongly?
It's been quite the journey, Mark. And as you were listening to Edwina Currie, you were shaking your head there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point is that, I mean, interest rates have gone up all over the world. I don't think Liz Truss's mini-budget impacted the European markets or America. Interest rates were always going to correct to normal. I have changed my mind on a lot of things, but I think that the Conservatives should be pointing out this. If you like, the country has moved really quite dramatically to the left, I would say, over the past 10 or 20 years. Even under a Conservative government, we've got taxes at their highest rate since the 1940s, public spending at an all-time high, new regulations coming out pretty much every day. My worry is that your average voter will think, well, if I want high taxes, high regulation, and yet more state spending, I might as well vote for the full fat version, and that's the Labour Party. I think we do need to tackle a good number of institutions which I think are basically biased against Conservative goals. I don't think that's a teenage debating point. I think one of the lessons of this period of Conservative government is we too readily accepted the institutional infrastructure that Tony Blair embedded, and we said, we'll just work with that grain.
Okay.
And I fear that grain works against Conservative ends.
Edwina Currie, Rishi Sunak is full of surprises. No one saw the July election date coming, did they? So do you think it's possible that he might adopt some of these policies, such as, for example, ditching the ECHR to make Rwanda a reality?
Well, I think we all want lower taxes, and that's very much an objective. And I certainly would like to see lower public spending, but I think anyone that's advocating that has got to be very clear about where they want to cut public spending. And it's not enough just to cut the Office of Budget Responsibility. That'll save enough to buy, you know, like 3 school dinners. To do it on a serious basis, you have to do what Margaret Thatcher did. And it took her a long time to do it, which is actually to shrink the size of the state in a very meaningful way. And you cannot do it overnight. We really need to have a decade of power in order to be able to do that properly. As for some of the slightly odder things that are being suggested, no, because I think in the end that would split the party. And I'm sure Mark will agree with me that whatever else gets elected, it isn't a divided party. In fact, I would wish that people like Mark and Annunziata and her dad and all their brothers and sisters would get involved in actually supporting Rishi Sunak, and we might actually have an opportunity of clawing back in the polls and of actually winning some seats.
OK, Mark, listen, do you think there's a chance that Rishi Sunak might drop the microphone and surprise a few people with his manifesto? Perhaps he's having a look through your suggestions with keen interest.
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, you might say he's been quite brave on policy announcements. You can decide what you think of them. Quadruple locking the state pension, quite expensive in public spending terms. Bringing back national service. I'm not totally sure I'm persuaded of that either, but these are at least radical ideas. But I do agree with Edwina on this. I think that a broad-based party needs to put forward a range of ideas, but I've been unequivocal in my support for Rishi Sunak. I think it was ludicrous that people were trying to get rid of him as our Prime Minister. But in a broad-based party, you need to be put forward ideas. And it seems to me at the moment that to get a bit of momentum, the first thing that the Conservatives have got to do is to win back a block of those reform voters, who I think stand for the sort of things that I've put forward and Annunziata has put forward in her newspaper article today. That doesn't transform things overnight, but just getting 3, 4, 5% of them back into the Tory column, that might be the momentum we need. I think some of the ideas I put forward would get you that momentum.
Edwina, we're going to go back to your discipline at 5 Live. A few seconds, if you could. First of all, this is like Christmas for Keir Starmer. Tories divided going into an election. But what would you put in that manifesto that could move the dial for Rishi Sunak?
Oh, I think I would remind everybody what a competent and thorough and decent bloke Rishi is. That we have a very good team. At least those that are planning to stay in Parliament, and that, if they're not careful, they're going to end up with a socialist government. And that is not something that has been a success in recent decades. It's always led to trouble. It's always led to more inflation. It's always led to the payment coming from your pockets in the end. One way or another, you end up much less well off with a socialist government. That is an absolute certainty. They're very good indeed at spending money, as long as it's not theirs.